tax
the
breaks.
reality of neoliberalism as it coming out of Mont Pelerin and the society, it was ultimately about a protection racket for a specific industry or specific players within an industry.
But fair point. More right word than like relative to where we are. Yes, completely agree.
No, it's just it's almost definitionally right.
Right word shift. Yeah, I think I was pulling hairs. Well, but anyway, so I agree to a certain extent. I'm fairly modern on a lot of issues. I think there's got to be some push and pull. I think I'd like to see a Democratic Party that provides sound regulation in key areas that matter, like we're talking about lead and water and things like this. And then I'd like to see actually any party, I don't care who does it, like it's a sound reason to be like, hey, don't dump lead and garbage in our water. But at the same time, it's also to say, hey, we should reassess what we blocked and why we blocked it. Then maybe there's some regulations.
What specifically are you talking about?
Like certain things to be deregulated.
Like what?
So the M1A, for instance, right? So I brought it to guns. My point is just in general.
What's the what?
It's a specific example of where Democrats have regulated firearms in a way that makes literally no sense.
Okay, it makes no sense.
Do anything.
What's the downside here?
Making people felons for owning something while allowing.
How many of those people have been made felons by owning a
10,000? I don't know more.
10,000 felons. There are 10,000 felons in. When was this in Maryland?
You mean convicted?
No, you said felon. I'm just asking.
Right. So I'll give you an example. The pistol brace ruling, right? So when the courts ruled that pistol braces made a pistol a short-barreled rifle, I actually had to dismantle a bunch of my weapons and separate. And there was no law passed. There was no act of Congress. This was ATF making an arbitrary decision that I was now committing felonies for simply having owned a legal product that I bought that was legal at the time. And Congress never passed this law. So now I risk prison over a nonsensical regulation.
You were talking about Democrats and
overregulating
things. But you just said that this was not a law that was passed. It was an assessment made by the courts.
No, it wasn't by the courts. It was the ATF arbitrarily.
And
this is the Chevron ruling that the agencies have a right to self-regulate and make their determinations. So the ATF, this is partly why people on the right were celebrating this, because the ATF was arbitrarily deciding that it was now a crime without any act of Congress. So we had to actually, I had to go dismantle.
So aside from these instances with you don't like some of these gun regulations, what other regulations do you have a problem with?
I don't know. I mean, there are certain things that I want to be regulated more than I think about in terms of deregulation. The lead in the water pipes is the easiest example.
Lead is actually.
And why isn't it being enforced is the question, I suppose. But
also, it is being enforced. I mean, the problem at what happened
about uranium too.
Happened in Michigan was that you had a Republican governor who wanted to basically disempower a city that was frankly, largely African American city, and
I think gambling should be regulated. I am no fan of the deregulation. I think what we
but I'm specifically, I get that you have some issue with some like very marginal gun stuff.
Should be regulated.
But what should not be regulated? Like you said that you have a problem with what Democrats are doing in terms of regulation. I'm curious as to.
I think that's an overestimation. I think that I would like to see regulations reassessed and then either.
But which ones? What are you talking about?
I'm saying we should have a review of regulation in general.
So you think we should review every single regulation that exists?
I think they should have sunset clauses.
Why?
Well, because nothing's infinite, nothing's absolute. We might say, for instance, okay, I'll give you an example of regulation.
Lead's always going to be bad for people.
Yes.
So that one we wouldn't sunset, right?
Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah. We're talking about if we apply a regulation to a specific body or something, a body of water, perhaps the body of water may change. So, I'll give you an example. Like we have
toxins in the water are always going to be toxic.
Which is why I'm in favor of more regulation, and that the deregulation thing is just a safeguard on we shouldn't be making sure that we're reassessing periodically.
Why would you sunset like those regulations on what is poisonous in water, for instance?
I wouldn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you just said that.
That's why I said I think it's an overestimation of. I think you may overestimate what I'm trying to say.
Oh.
Is that Typically, I think like phthalates, for instance, should be regulated. I don't believe there's a quote unquote free market solution to keeping endocrine disruptors in our food. That makes no sense.
No, I agree with that. I don't think that's controversial. But
there are regulations on things like your vehicles, your engine standards, guns, for instance. And I'm not saying I know specifically each and every regulation that should be deregulated. I think it is prudent for a society to say, hey, there's no market solution to stop people putting poison in our food. Our food has become just trash. Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon. So subscribe and come hang out.